Hey everyone. This week our topic was on counseling skills, especially on the different ways counselors can connect with their clients, and the different practices we can use to make the working alliance more efficient. This week we were asked to zone in on self-disclosure. Self-disclosure is a really important topic when it comes down to counseling and the counseling relationship. Um, from what it seems like to me, self-disclosure is exactly what it sounds like. It's one person revealing something about themselves or how they perceive something in the counseling process. Content self-disclosure seems to be the kind of self-disclosure most people talk about, which is a specific thing or event that a counselor may reveal, whereas you have process self-disclosure where the counselor might observe something during the counseling process and initiate their feedback or their thoughts on it. But this week we were asked to talk about our opinion on self-disclosure. Based on everything that I've researched and read about this week, I think that self disclosure is an important thing in counseling. I think self disclosure kind of helps the client see where the counselor stands. I think self disclosure can show a client how a counselor thinks, what a counselor deems is important, and also it can help a client see that self-disclosure is meant for their purpose. Self-disclosure is one of those things where it is used to benefit the client. If it's not going to benefit the client, then your self-disclosure is most likely not needed in that situation. So I come up with a few pros and cons for self-disclosure. Um, the first pro to self-disclosure was I found that it seems to level out the power in the relationship. Self-disclosure is a way for the counselor to kind of humble themselves and bring them down on a level where they can be made more relatable. It kind of takes away from the idea of exerting themselves as an expert. I think that self-disclosure shows that the counseling relationship is straightly for the client, but it also helps show that the counselor is active and involved. Another pro was that when it's used right, it can be used to foster trust. Just like a client, a counselor may have things that have happened in their life or things that they see going on through the counseling process that they may feel if they were to talk about might help the client move forward. So I feel like there are some things that not only can a counselor show empathy, but they can also show that they relate from a direct circumstance. That may help a client see, hey, someone else does know what I'm going through, or they have been through it and they survived it, so can I. Another pro, or another reason why I found self disclosure to be important in the counseling relationship, was that self disclosure from the client can show the counselor's ability to show human emotion. Oftentimes, counselors are pegged as people that have it all under control. They don't have any kind of emotion or anything like that. But we know that we, as people that are trying to be counselors, we're humans also. We have the same humanity as other people. In fact, we actually see humanity on a totally different level. We respect it more than some other people might. And self-disclosure shows the client that the counselor is a professional in their field, but they ultimately are also a human with human emotions, human feelings, human thoughts. So I really feel like self-disclosure is key to showing that counselors maintain a level of humanity and promote that with people. There are also some cons to using self-disclosure. I feel like self-disclosure can make a client become too comfortable with the counselor. I feel like this is where dual relationships and unhealthy, non-counselor oriented relationships can come into effect. I feel like this is also opens the door to unhealthy relationships. The lines can become blurred in counseling. That can lead to some possible pitfalls with the working alliance. So you have to be careful for that. I also think another con would be that if self-disclosure is poorly timed, it can come across more interrogative and nosy than than coming across as beneficial for the client. If it's done at the wrong time, then a client may think that you're snooping or you have some kind of ulterior motive, whereas really you're just trying to shed some light on something that you observe or that you believe that might help the client. But then again, timing is everything. So if you don't do things when they're meant to be done, then the client may see it totally different from where you see it. Another issue with self-disclosure is that instead of the client seeing the counselor as a human with human emotions, they might actually see the counselor as being broken or no better than them. And we are no better than them. They are also humans. We're all equal. But as a professional, they look up to counselors to be specialized and certified and strong in their field. So if they see a counselor that is doing too much self-disclosure or is going really deep in their self-disclosure and the counseling session completely becomes about the counselor, then they may see the counselor as being broken, and then your credentials, your reliability may be questioned. And then you may see the working alliance and that relationship slowly begin to dissolve. So self-disclosure, I believe, is a great thing, but I think that it has its place in counseling. I don't think self-disclosure is something you do immediately in the counseling relationship. I think self-disclosure is done after you are building rapport, after you have a nice, solid relationship. I feel like a good time to use self-disclosure is when you are deeper, maybe halfway through the counseling process. That way both of you have your feet wet, you kind of have a feel for each other, and you're not really going to give beneficial self-disclosure if you really don't know the client that well. And you have to give yourself and the client time to open up and to become softer and warmer towards one another. So self-disclosure is something that I believe is important, but I don't think it's something that's important in the early stages of counseling. I think it needs to be done with diligence and be done towards the middle stages. I also think that you have to be careful with what kind of client you do self-disclosure with. There are some clients that kind of want an in and out kind of counseling thing. They want you to help them, and that's all they want to know. They might get fed up, and they might not want to know anything else about you. They just might want your help based on their situation, and that's fine. It may be hard because as counselors, we do like to put part of ourselves out there for the client to get to know us, to trust us, but we ultimately have to do every counseling technique for the benefit of the client. So this week, our chapter on counseling skills was pretty interesting, and I enjoyed researching self-disclosure, and I hope that it becomes one of those issues that, although it will never truly be clear, it becomes an issue, hopefully, that we get a better grasp on.